What is going on, family? Hopefully, you are doing absolutely wonderful. We're starting a little bit later than we usually do on this Sunday, so I do apologize. But hey, that has nothing to do with you. I'm supposed to be here on time at 4 p.m. PST, 7 p.m. EST. So if you're rewatching this, if you fast forwarded, hey, let's get right to it today. I'm going to wait just a little bit of time because I know some people may be getting notifications that we have just started. I see some viewers coming in slowly but surely. So let me know where you're tuning in from. I'll check the chat. Let me know where you're tuning in from. Let me know where you're tuning in from, and we'll get started shortly. So, amazing. Happy Mother's Day to all the mothers and mother figures and mentors and teachers out there. Hopefully you have had an amazing day yourself. I do understand that it is Mother's Day weekend, so we may have a little bit of lack of viewership as people are spending the evening and time with their respective families. If your mother is no longer with you, she is with you here in spirit. So praying for you for good energy. Whether you've had a good relationship with your mother, poor relationship, whatever it is, just know that that's what brought you into this world. So you got to give a shout out to our mothers out there that have done the good work to just, hey, my women, my mothers, y'all are just godsends. All right. So if you haven't called your mom today, haven't prayed for your mother, if you haven't said, hey, mom, I see you. Just do that today. I know we take sometimes for granted. So if you are a mother, take the day off, rewatch this. So thank y'all so much for just coming on with me, hanging out with me. If you're rewatching this, awesome. And let's get right into it today. All right. All right, so let's set the platform and the stage. As always, my name is Dr. B. If you don't know who I am, I'm a holistic life and business coach and strategist for entrepreneurs and thought leaders. Here on this Stock Sermon Sunday is a time that we do each Sunday at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Always turn on your notifications because sometimes I have some technical difficulties. Not your fault at all. I do respect your time, but I'm here on time. Typically a 5-minute buffer. Today, a little bit longer, had some technical difficulties, so do apologize for that. But we discuss what is happening in the overall economy. I typically give words of wisdom on these Sundays. So if you are a person that is like, hey, I don't know anything about the stock market, I don't trade, you can come on here, get a word, and also get some information on what's going on in the economy. I talk from a perspective of a long-term investor and also a trader. So if you don't know any of these chart things and you don't trade and make income intra-week, intra-day, right? If you don't know anything about that just yet, that is okay. Maybe you have a retirement account or a portfolio that you're just trying to make sure that you don't dip down again, or where is it going, or what should I be prepared for, things like that. So make sure that you're tapping in from all different perspectives. If you have people that you're referring to us, awesome. Thank you so much. So bring people along here inside of our community. We'd love to have you. All right. If you do want to expand further, right, after these Stock Sermon Sundays, if you're like, hey, I'm jumping every Sunday, or I'm bringing a person with me, we do have a Discord, or if you don't know what Discord is, just a community hub that's online, all right, where we're giving trade ideas, information. I'm telling people where Bitcoin is going, where crypto's going. A lot of people say, hey, where's XRP going? Or where is NVIDIA going? Where are good buy opportunities? Like, what is good buys right now? I have $100, I have $1,000, things of that sort. So make sure that you're tapping in to our Discord. You can tap in for a monthly fee, a weekly fee, or you can pay for the entirety of the year. We'd love to have you. So make sure you tap in with that. All right. If you need one-on-one coaching, mentorship from an entrepreneur standpoint, we have what we call our Kairos mentorship. That is where I'm working with people for a minimum of typically 4 months to 6 month time frame on their purpose, things they've got going on in their lives. They want to build a business. They want to start one. They want to just expand. What am I supposed to do in this world? And also, according to this Stock Sermon Sundays, they typically want to know how do I get involved in this market? So it's coinciding together from a holistic perspective. So all those things will be down below. You can check it out on my website, brianmcelder.com. Without further ado, all that out of the way, let's jump into it today. All right, let's jump into it today. All right, let me move this up here. And I think we're ready to go. All right, let's share my screen. We got a lot to talk about this week. A lot to talk about. Make sure I got all the things set up there. And we'll jump into the economic calendar a second. All righty. Shrink myself. All right, so I'll make this quick because I do know it's a little bit lighter today since I was already late, a little bit delayed, and also it's Mother's Day weekend, especially for those on the East Coast. You don't want to be in here for 2 hours. I don't either personally. So I'll make this quick, easy, and understanding, give you the main points and get up out of here. If you have any questions, go and put them down in the chat. I'll be checking the chat periodically throughout this live stream. Make sure you tap in. If you do, I'll check it afterwards as well if you're rewatching. All right. So let's jump into, as always, our earnings. We always start with our fundamentals, our earnings data here. We have a couple of things that have happened over the weekend. We have some trade deal stuff going on, so we'll get to that. But our earnings for this week, as we're wrapping up kind of the major earnings season, okay? This is an interesting earnings week because we have some kind of, as we call them, sleepers. We've got our big tech companies out of the way. Tesla, the only things left is NVIDIA, which is coming at the end of this month. Right. And we still have some other semiconductors that are still lingering. But we've got most of those big tech companies, Microsoft, Meta, Apple, Amazon, those things out of the way the past couple of weeks. And now we're coming into some quote unquote sleepers or smaller companies here. OK. On Monday, RGTI is interesting. Okay. It's in the quantum computing space. So that is one to pay attention to. Last week, I missed Lyft. I've been doing pretty well if you're inside of leverage or if you're not, on some of these earnings predictions as whether they're going up after earnings or down after earnings. I've been mastering kind of that chart setup that would typically suggest that we're going up or down after earnings. It's already typically priced in, as we call it. Monday.com typically has a good movement on their earnings. Chegg also has a pretty good movement on their earnings as well. So those might be just interesting to watch, right? If they have gaps in them, could look at Monday.com or Chegg. But RGTI plug, yeah, I know that was a 2020, 2021 kind of thing. May check it out, but yeah. JD will be interesting in the Chinese sector. If there's some China trade deals going on right now, maybe some China stocks might pop. CSE has been running very well as of late. CyberArk, okay, in the quantum computing space, cybersecurity space. So JDC, CyberArk will be interesting to watch. Don't see anything really there. Oklo, that's one that we've been paying attention to in our community that I had one of our community members bring up to. So shout out to you. You know who you are. Nothing major here that I'm interested in there as far as trading wise. And then towards the latter half of the week, we got BABA. Obviously, China sector, Walmart, that'll be pretty big there. DE, John Deere, always got some movement typically. And then Kava. That's kind of the main one this week. If I were to look at all of these, Kava would be my main watch for this week as far as do they go up after earnings, down after earnings, right? You can, watch that and just see for your liking whether you trade it or you just want to see what happens with it, okay? So Kava, main watch. Walmart, we'll see what it does. That could provide a trading opportunity towards the latter half of the week. Okay, let's jump on our economic calendar. Economic calendar here. What do we have for this week? Big week, and that is CPI and PPI. Okay, so Tuesday we have CPI, and typically we have PPI and CPI back to back, but it looks like it's split up now. Right, where we have CPI and then in the middle of the week, typically it's towards the latter half of the week where we have CPI on Thursday, PPI on Friday. And then we got Fed Powell yapping his gums yet again on Thursday. So this is going to be very, very volatile of a week. Last week, I really didn't trade at all. I had maybe like 2 or 3 trades, if that. And I just was not liking the price action. I was not liking how Trump was speaking, in the middle of the trading day where a lot of setups were just disrupted, in my opinion, from the trading perspective. If you've got a long-term investing account, you don't really care because he's going to pump it and it's going to go up and then it'll come down and then it'll go up over time. It doesn't really matter. But for trading more specifically, we want as traders less interruptions. So data needs to kind of be out of the way, which on Tuesday, CPI will be out of the way. That means it comes in an hour before the market opens. Okay. Wednesday, we got a couple of Fed speakers, so that should provide some good trading opportunities on Wednesday. in the middle of the week. Monday, pretty clear. So tomorrow we may have some gap ups, right? We may have some after hours movements today in the market, just because we'll get to in a second the trade deals that have been going on over the weekend. And also with Trump saying buy stock, buy stock, buy stock, right? I need to do a whole separate video on that. But if you have any questions about that, please let me know. I think I got a lot of Instagram messages about, Brian, should we be buying stock right now? Or like, what stock? Trump said to buy stock. Just go opposite whatever that man says personally. Don't go against him, but I would just say be careful chasing based off of what he's saying personally, in my opinion. Okay, because I trust the charts, personally, not him. And that's not a political statement either. Thursday, PPI before market open. We got retail sales. That'll be important. A lot of our retail chains, Abercrombie and Fitch, Walmart. You saw on the charts that we had Walmart coming out on Thursday morning with their earnings. So that should be interesting with Walmart earnings along with retail sales. How does that do? That'll tell us how the consumer is spending, which is important in this economy. And very heavy. We got Jerome Powell speaking before the market opens. So ideally this week for my trading people, right, I want to maybe get some green if there's some gaps that may happen on Monday from the over weekend news of the whether we gap down or gap up, right? Get some early trades in. If we see something, go ahead and scalp some things, get some early trades in, get some green if we can find it, because it's fairly clear on Monday, tomorrow. And then on Tuesday, once CPI reports, we should get a nice gap in our indexes where there's gap downs or gap ups, depending on the data. If the CPI data is poor, right, and we gap down, it may continue. So we got to be careful about that. If we somehow gap up, you already know we can trade that typically pretty easily. All right. So we'll trade typically, Monday, Tuesday, and then I think Wednesday, and hopefully lock in some green those 2 to 3 days. I personally will not be available on Friday because I am traveling early in the morning. So if I can get most of my green Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday of this week, may trade light on Thursday if there's some trading opportunities, and then just be done. Okay. So I want to get majority of my green out of the way Monday and Tuesday, lower my risk coming into Powell speaking on Thursday, and then Wednesday, some Fed speakers in the way. All right. So pretty nice trading week. Not a lot of big earnings in the way either. So it should be pretty nice once we let CPI report. All right. Let's check on that gold trade really quick. Looking pretty nice. Looking pretty nice. Using that 3280. If you're inside of our community, signaled this. So if it holds 3280, it should take off through that gap back to 3300. So we'll see how that plays out pretty soon. All right. Let me get this off because it may be lagging a little bit. Let me check. All right. Think we're good. All right. We're still good. All righty. Let's jump into our charts. Let's go over the main watches for this week. And then I'll finish off with some more fundamental data. Fundamental data meaning what is President Trump and all of them been talking about all weekend. Okay. Let's go into SPY. All right, main watch. If we have a trade deal that is coming in positive and just say overnight we gap up, okay? Do you see, for those that are fairly new watching me, I think I have most of my listeners that are frequently here, so you already know I don't need to go into detail. But you see this gap right here. If we wake up in the morning and we're gapped up, right? And maybe that trade deal has put us up into close to the 580 level. That's the main watch I'm having this week, is kind of up into 577 and 580, okay, on SPY. Maybe one last little push up into that area in that zone, but we've got to get above 571, okay, solidly. It's getting a little bit heavy up here. Okay. And personally, what I've been looking at is when we have gaps down here like this, okay, we've got CPI and PPI in the way of choosing a direction for us. So what we'll see probably tomorrow is we'll see probably some consolidation, or we'll gap up to close to 577, 580. Okay. If we're up here, I personally would be very careful taking calls or longs up to the upside. Okay. Your support right now, right? Because we're not going down, right? We're still holding bullish structure above this 562 to 560 level. Okay. As you can see there, broke up, held, came down, held, reclaimed, held. It's roughly around this 562 level. Okay. So if we consolidate above 562, 563 and just sit up here, right, that's still bullish structure. Okay. What is going to typically happen is if it holds that level, it's going to try to retest the upside and try to get back up to that 570. Remember what I was saying last week, which is why I kind of just stayed away this last week, is because I said I wanted it closer to 570, 571 to really trade off of it and trade the downside, or I want it closer into this 550. It's a massive range, or 555. Okay. I really want down into this 550. Okay. That is a massive range and massive zone that we're currently sitting in. Okay. We've got this big range up here, and this is a possibility of what could happen. Do you see that there's a little bit more gap to fill to the upside if CPI maybe takes us up and we trend upwards this week? Okay. That'll be our last final push, in my opinion, towards that 580 that we're trying to get to. In here, the risk to reward is very iffy. Okay. Here's how the risk to reward is. Okay. It looks something like that, meaning we can choose either direction. Either direction. Okay. So we need to wait. And why I told my community last week, I'm not going to be very active. I wake up in the morning, I'm like, I don't like anything. Because it's SPY and QQQ are really not at my levels that I can really trust which direction it's going right now, other than just saying higher high, higher high, higher high, and slightly higher high here, higher low, higher low, higher low, higher low. That's technically bullish structure, right? Okay. But it's sitting up here, and we've already made roughly an 18% move from the lows. So I'm more so talking to my trading folks. Okay. So you see that at the very bottom of my screen, roughly 18 and 19% from the lows, with gaps up, stair stepping until it stair steps to the level that it wants to get to. And then the orders are filled and we, finally cool off a little bit. Okay. So I want to trade ideally with a better risk to reward, closer on SPY, back down to 550 will be our line in the sand. Okay. That is our line in the sand, is 550 for that retest. And it would look something like this. Okay. So that's better to trade calls off of, to be a little bit more confident. Okay. And I ideally want to trade closer to this 575, 580 level in this area up here, closer to 580. All right. Anywhere in this zone, it's kind of a no trade zone for me, or it's more of a scalping zone, just in and out, I'm done. I don't like anything. I don't like heavy size. I don't like holding trades, right? Any of that stuff in this like consolidation zone right here. Okay. So if it's still in here tomorrow, I'm probably going to sit it out tomorrow morning. I'll watch it in the morning with you guys, since I took off last week in our live trading session. I'll watch it in the morning, kind of see what it does, where it is. If we gap, great. If it's still sitting in here, I'm like, I'll see y'all in the afternoon. Okay. Protect your capital until we get a move from CPI. Okay. So that is my game plan for tomorrow. Now, does that mean for those that are new that may be rewatching me in the future or whatnot, does that mean, you're only trading SPY, Dr. B, or you're only trading, the indices SPY, QQQ, IWM? No, I trade my respective stocks for options based off of where and what SPY and QQQ are doing. So if I see this in here, I'm not really too much interested in maybe being confident in what Apple's going to do unless it gets moving with the market. I'm not going to be very confident of what Amazon's going to do up here, trading it when it needs a little bit more room, probably trying to get closer to that 200 or 198 level again. Okay, filling that top gap. Not really interested. I need to see some movement in the overall market to trade confidently the levels or the structure that I see in my respective stocks. And we'll get to those in a minute. Okay. So understanding SPY, where it is above 563, above 564, if it's holding there, is still fairly bullish. Okay. If it starts getting confidently underneath, maybe, underneath 560, and I see a candle close and I see like solid candles closing underneath 560 and holding, and it retests and it's forming this lower high structure, maybe we could scalp it down to 555 and 550. We'll have to see. Okay. But I don't expect a big move to be happening before CPI, truthfully. Okay. Let's go to QQQ. Put a 1 in the chat if you're in Leverage University and you watched my training over how to scalp or a strategy that we've been looking at for getting better off open trades for the day on SPY, QQQ, IWM. Let me know with a 1 in the chat if you watched that video. If you're not, I think it's one of the best ones that, I've recorded personally, as far as when people say, is there a strategy that I could test, Dr. B, like with SPY, QQQ, IWM, or when the market opens for New York session, which is 9:30 Eastern when it opens, okay, for options trading more specifically, what can I go off of to really be patient or really look at what might happen? So put a 1 in the chat if you watched that video. If you have not, take your time out tonight, watch it, and maybe we test it tomorrow, even if we watch it and see what happens. Okay. All right. 487 is our support range on QQQ. 487. Okay. 487 is really the big support range. In my opinion, still kind of ugly up here. As you can see, just grinding its way up, and resistance overhead is still sitting underneath 493. Okay. So 493, if we gap above 494, we're probably going to squeeze up into this gap. So above 494, ideally 495. I would not try to short, right? Just wait till 500, wait till 499, and we'll see what happens there. Okay. So above 495, it's ideally going into that 500 range, and we're pushing up and just squeezing. It'll be one of those nasty kind of grinds up. Okay. You know what I mean? Just nasty, just not say nasty because it's hard to find entries when it's just slowly grinding up into that zone like that. I personally don't like to trade that kind of stuff. I'll just wait until it gets to 500 personally. But if you're a person and you're not in our community and you trade on your own, and you do your own due diligence, above 495, you can take some calls up. Maybe for $2, $3, $4, $5, that'll be 50, 60%, depending on, what contracts you choose. And don't fight the trend, at least for right now. Okay. And the reason I say 500 or above that 495 and it's getting heavy, please be mindful that look what we did up here. We grinded and grinded and grinded and grinded up to a top level, and news or data, and this is tariffs more specifically, shot us back down. Okay. So I don't know what it's going to be, but the market ideally needs to cool off just slightly. Okay. Needs to cool off just slightly. And here's the reasoning why. Our fear and greed index is starting to get up into that greed sector, that extreme greed. So as we push up here, here's our timeline. Okay. Do you see up in this area back in October, middle of October, it got up into that greed sector and it started to cool off. And we got back into fear in November. Got up into greed, about 65, cooled off at the end of the year. Where are we sitting right now? We're sitting about 62. So it's getting up there into that stage where it's going to trap retail investors, which is why I mentioned on my stories. If you watch my IG stories sometimes, I haven't mentioned it here on the channel, but our ideas are usually correct. So if you missed the bottom tick, if you missed, your entries on calls or buys or, shares or whatever, I'd be slightly patient to see if we cool off just a little bit, either this week, next week, or the end of May. Okay. Then you can buy back up again. But for right now, I would not personally, not financial advice, go heavy on some of these stocks for right now as they're grinding their way up without any deep pullback. Okay. So you can do what you will with that. For those that have not seen it, because I don't know who's on here, this is a free platform. This is a public live. So this is what it would look like. It would come up into here. Okay. They hear Trump saying, hey, buy stock, buy stock, buy stock. Come up in there, ideally. And as you know, the economy is still not, rectified just yet. Everyone's waiting on a trade deal. So at some point up in this range at 500, that's going to be a big level, in my opinion, to get through. Now, if we get through it, great. We're going higher even more. Okay. But what I'm looking for is I'm being very careful in this zone for a pullback into there. Right. And that would still form a higher low. Okay. Do you see that on QQQ? Bounce, grind, pullback, deep pullback, bounce, grind, and go higher. So these are the types of moves where what I've seen online, like just in general, if you're a long-term investor, it doesn't affect you. Just buy the next dip. But for traders, when I see people like online, like trying to tell folks, hey, be careful. They're like, what are you talking about? We're bullish. It's like, yeah, you're bullish until you get wiped out by one candle that comes down. That doesn't mean being fearful. That just means keep your head on a swivel, as we've already made an 18 to 19% move in a month. Okay. Without a deep pullback. That's all I'm saying. All right. So if you know, there's some gaps to fill down to the downside. Let's check on that gold trade really quick. And I'll talk about gold a little bit in the futures market. Let's check on that gold trade, what it's doing here. Moving beautifully. Moving absolutely beautifully here. That break of structure, retest 3280. There's a gap back to the upside. All right. So beautiful, 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 beautiful. Headed back to that 3,300 level. All right. So nice trade there. Awesome job. Anyone that took that to the T. I know it was quick, but if you took that, if you're in our futures, Forex, anything, this is XAU, which is gold. And then we can trade GC, GLD, all those good things. All right. Cool. Let's keep it moving. Keep putting your putting the questions down in the chat. I'll check that. No questions, no thoughts. I see more people jumping on. So what's up to everybody? How are y'all doing? All right. What's going on? All righty. No questions, no thoughts. Man, can y'all say hey? Hey, everybody. All right. So we did SPY, did QQQ. IWM watching up into this 203 area. Breaks above 203. Then we've got some movement up into that 206, 207, 208 area. And where maybe CPI gaps us up there. All right. So if we gap up above that 20, just say 204, and we hold 203, I do think we're going to push up into that 207, 208 area if CPI is good and it takes us up into that zone. Okay. So this is a make or break for the market this week. Is what does CPI give us? What does that inflation data report give us? Is it poor? Is it good? Is it bad? You will see on Tuesday morning if we are up pre-market with a big green candle, or we are down and we gap down in the morning on Tuesday. Okay. You'll know from the candle that we'll see at 8:30 Eastern Standard Time on Tuesday morning. Okay. So we're going one way or the other. CPI will tell us which direction we're going. Okay. Let's see. So we did SPY, QQQ, IWM. Let's go into our major indices and look at some names I really like for this week. Okay. I think everyone's eyes is going to be on NVIDIA. Okay. NVIDIA, CPI. I mean, I really want to catch this move personally. I really want, NVIDIA up into this 123 is the top end zone. Is NVIDIA 123? 120 is kind of that mid-level zone, 118 to 120, but 123 is our top end zone. If we can't get above this 118 and we break back below 115, that is a failure. Okay. If we break back below 115 and you see NVIDIA underneath 115, maybe 114, 113, right? That would be looking something like this. Okay. So be mindful of this trend line on NVIDIA. If you're in my community, you want to mark that 115. We need to hold that 115, ideally 116. So anywhere above 116, 115.50 on NVIDIA is trying to do something like this and trend upwards into that 123 area. Okay. So CPI again will give us the direction this week. So that's how NVIDIA wants to kind of trend up into that 120, 123 area. Okay. So keep your zone on NVIDIA. You want to trade it ideally closer to 123. There's that little gap fill right there. Maybe CPI will gap us up into that 123. And then you got a little bit of room, maybe up into that 125 level. So I'm keeping my zone on NVIDIA that this is where it ultimately wants to get to from that 116, 117, or that break of that previous day high, which is roughly around, just say 119. Okay. So you want to trade at the higher end of the level. If you are a person that wants to short this move, maybe you think it's going to go a little bit higher and then to have a deep pullback, maybe people take profits before NVIDIA earnings, or you're maybe a person that says, hey, I want this break of this previous high above 119 and I can get a little bit of momentum, maybe a $2, $3, $4 move on NVIDIA to the upside, right? Either direction, please be careful up in here. CPI will give us the move. We're either going up or looks like this, going up with a green candle up into that level, or CPI, PPI, or this week are coming down. Okay. Like that. So 115 uses your pivot point. Okay. If we get a strong break underneath, we got some gaps below. If we start trending, then that 105 is our kind of like 550 level on SPY. Remember when I said that we could still come back and have a deep pullback? That 105 is your level on NVIDIA that you really want to, consider as a big support level. Okay. 105. I know it's deep, but that's the best level. Buys, previous high, buys, previous high, failure, gets up to the top end, failure, 105, gets back up into there. Okay. I know for some people, you may be looking at this for my gap fill folks, but that 105 could just bounce again and we go higher. Okay. So 105, that's your big support. And then 123 at the top end of the zone for NVIDIA is our big, kind of resistance. So this is how the zone looks. All right. And then 115 is our pivot. All right. Cool. All right. So for my risk to reward people, again, as a teaching moment, if I'm trading calls, you want to keep your stop tight. 116. If you're a person that wants to trade NVIDIA this week, keep your stop tight and you can take it up to that 122, 123 level, something like that. Okay. If you enter up here, that's how it would look. Break of that level, 118. And then you've got a little bit of room up into that 123. That's how that would look. Okay. If you're a person that wants to trade puts on this or the downside, which yes, people People do trade puts. For those that are like, who would short NVIDIA? Yes, you can short NVIDIA and make a lot of money. Okay. I would look at the reaction up in here. As you see, pushed up in that 125, big failure, pushed up in that 124, failure, 123 and some change, failure. Okay. So ideally you would want it up into this zone, and that's how your trade would look. Stop loss above 125, and you could trade it back to the downside if there's some volume and we break some structure. Okay. If we break underneath that 115, your entry would be close to maybe 113 and some change. If we break solidly underneath 115 on a higher time frame, right, you could look at that and keep your stop loss above 116. Okay. And it would look something like this, targeting maybe that just, these gap fills. All right. There's some buyers that are sitting right here, 110 and then 108 and then 105 to the downside. Okay. So you're just watching for those levels to trade confidently off of. If it's sitting right here, I just need to wait for it to choose a direction, because there's a lot of room either way. If you get into calls and it drops down like that, or if you get into puts, right, and it squeezes up, you see it's just a little bit tough, in my opinion, to trade in this zone right here with big data coming in this week. Okay. Can I get a 5 in the chat? We good? Everybody still good? XAU, let's check on that gold trade. Okay, still holding structure. There's that big gap I was talking about right here. If we can squeeze up and just take out these previous highs, still looking pretty good. All right. Chat, good. Palantir, good evening, Doc. Driving next hour, just listening in. MSTR, Palantir. Okay, anyone who puts anything in the chat, I'll go over those. Okay, what's going on, Tanvir? How are you doing, brother? How are you doing, man? Let's go over Palantir and MSTR. Okay, so Palantir, if I look at a weekly channel and I look at the RSI, okay, getting a little bit overextended here on the weekly RSI at the top here at 70, as you can see there. Right, we had a big rejection at 125, kind of a double top here, right? Gap down, and now we got bought back up. If I go into my daily, okay, we gap down, bought back up, rejected 120, came back down, formed another higher low. Okay, so depending on what you're trying to do, Tanvir, my trading levels for you would ideally be up here at these 124, 123 level. Okay. Trading it back up through this gap fill. Okay. Watch what it does back up into there with a stop loss above 125. Okay. Depending on what you want to do. Okay. So since it's getting heavy up here, the trade that I like the best personally, because SPY and QQQ are in resistance, the trade that I like is if I can correlate this gap fill right here, okay, with SPY and QQQ pushing up into that top end resistance, I actually like another rejection for puts back down. Okay. That's the trade that I like the most. And that's not just because I like puts. It's just because I'm correlating with high level resistance on SPY and QQQ getting really heavy up at the top. We're in greed, right? Like we just showed. If I can get that little push up into that gap, maybe on Monday, or CPI takes us up there, something like that, I want to watch up here and see if I can find some type of lower high like that, and see if I can find, that gap to be filled right back down to that 110 level. Okay. That's the trade that I like the most on Palantir. Okay. In the middle of this range, you may could get some value, Tanvir, if you only like calls. This could be a nice bull flag, right? Have 115 as your support, and then just trade it right back up into that gap, right? Maybe Monday or Tuesday, if you see some bullish momentum structuring like it is now, 118, 120 break, and then get that nice $3-4 move through that gap. Okay. So that's what I would look at for Palantir as, this finishing the move. You could trade it up with a stop loss above underneath 115 if you're trading. Okay. For any of my long-term investors on Palantir, okay, do you see that we are getting heavy up here? Okay. I'm not saying that Palantir can't break out into new all-time highs and go crazy, but you need a break above 126. Okay. 126 break will take Palantir into clear blue skies. Okay. But we got to wait and see, because you will get trapped up here if you buy Palantir shares up at this top end level. Okay. This is just coming from experience, and it trades right back down into those gaps, and we come back into the 80s and the 70s and the 90s. Okay. So my best buy area for Palantir, if you're looking to add more shares, would be back down into 90. Okay. Back down into 90, back down into 85. All right. Those would be pickup zones for Palantir. Would be 85 to 90 again for anyone that's a long-term investor. If you're a big long-term investor and you're like, Brian, I've been in since 14, I've been in since, back down here at these levels, like some of us, right? 17, 14, 20, $30, things like that, right? You may want to just DCA on the way down. Okay. DCA on the way down, and your load up zones will be closer into the 50s and 60s. Now, I'm not saying that that's coming anytime soon, because it's the strongest stock in the market, but you always got to be prepared for those deep pullbacks. And is this a double top? And once the tariffs actually start hitting in, I know Palantir is not too heavily affected by the tariffs, but if in the fall timeframe, the best buy opportunities, for those that don't know, is typically that September, October timeframe. So if we do have some sell-off again into that, August, September, October timeframe, and Palantir does give us that deeper pullback, you want to be prepared on those lower ends of the levels. All right. But right now it's strong. Does that help, Tanvir? I'm not sure. And always, Tanvir, if you need, if you're asking a question, let me know if you're trading it. Hey, Brian, what do you think about Palantir? I'm looking to trade it this week. Or, hey, Brian, I'm a long-term investor in Palantir. Where would the best buy opportunity if I have a sub 100 average cost? That would help me answer the question a little bit better, to give some guidance. Cool. So I want to trade Palantir closer to that 123, 120 area up in here through that gap. All right. Now, Brian, what if it doesn't fill the gap first and it comes underneath 115, right? Then this could be a big bear flag. And we're probably retesting closer to that 105 area, 105, 106. Okay. So I'll show you what it looks like on XAU. Here's what it looks like. Okay. I know this is gold, so I'm just looking at structure here. Do you see how there was some gaps up here on gold? You can't see it now. But do you see how this, downtrend is coming here? It gaps down, tries to trend back up, and then you wake up and then it gaps down again and comes lower, and it retests the low. So these are the things I just want people to be prepared for, about whichever direction Palantir chooses to go, right, is the direction that we'll choose to trade. So if it breaks structure, breaks underneath 115, it's probably going to retest that low at 107, and you would have a candle that looks something like that. Then we would change the strategy and say, hey, maybe it wants to come lower, right? Back down into 105, 106, right? Something like that. Double bottom. And then we go up, right? So that's the way I personally trade when I see gaps. Okay. I'd really rather fill the top gap first if it's in resistance like it is now, and then trade it down. Or if it just falls, okay, cool. I'll look at calls back down into this zone at 98 to 100. So we'll see. I think CPI, again, like I said, we'll choose a direction where we go. MSTR. Let me know if that helps you out, Tanvir. And if you need more clarification, let me know too. Was looking to day trade Palantir to 125. This helps greatly. Okay, cool. So if you're looking to day trade it, keep that 115 as your support. 115, 116, stop loss underneath 115 if you're looking to day trade it maybe Monday before CPI. Or if you trade it through CPI data and you swing, carry calls from Monday into Tuesday, just keep that stop loss underneath that 115. Cool. MSTR moving very, very well due to Bitcoin, obviously, and crypto making nice bull runs from a lot of the positive data that Trump is saying. So I'm correlating MSTR more so. That was interesting. Bitcoin forming that gap right there. I think we're going to have some cool off on Bitcoin as it's getting a little bit on the RSI high side on a daily. As you can see there, RSI is coming also back up into the top end resistance at 105, 106. Okay. And it's starting to get a little bit exhausted. Anytime you have a pop, okay, and if I look on the hourly here and it starts grinding like this, right, that's not necessarily the move that I personally like, because it starts grinding and getting exhausted. Maybe one more liquidity grab a little bit higher, and then everyone takes their profit and it comes right back down. Okay. So MSTR. What that means is you see these gaps. I'd use 430. Okay. I'm bringing this down right there. 430 and 440. Use it as big heavy zones. So correlate that 430 to 440 area as top end resistance. As you can see, already kind of, getting some liquidity grabs, and all that just means is I'm using terms that maybe for beginners, they don't understand, but market likes to push up into a zone and there's already orders being set there. So maybe someone is in calls on MSTR and they had their take profit at 430. It grabs it, cuts them out, right? And someone enters calls at the top and gets slammed, right? So they chase, right? And that's where a person's, orders are to take their profit. That's why we say in trading, don't chase the upside move. Don't chase the downside move. Wait for the retest, wait for another entry point, and then carry it further. Okay. So there you go. Tenveer. You can see here, maybe looking at that 430 or pressing up just maybe one more time if it can get up into that 440, right? But ideally it's getting heavy, if that answers your question, getting heavy. So if you have shares, great. If you're looking to trade it, which you say you're day trading, I would probably looking for more so of a pullback for calls back into 400. All right. That's would be the best. 390 to 400 would be your best area of opportunity there for a pullback into that zone. See what it does closer to 390 to 400 level, because there's a massive gap here that could, just have a fall through that like that. Okay. So seems like you're more of a call person. You're more of an upside person. So if you only trade that side of the market, I would ideally wait for a pullback to enter again, or maybe take a little quick continuation trade to retest the high of 430. You got about a 15-point move, but again, 423, a little heavy there. So yeah, I'm just looking at the heaviness. Where's the risk to reward? Risk to reward is getting a little bit overextended here on the top end for a pullback into that 400. So I'd watch 400, or I'd watch 430 and then 440. Does that help on MSTR? What's going on, Shalitha? Let's check on that gold. Is it holding that 43? Yeah, it's just building here. It's got to hold that 3280. Got to hold that 3280. All right. Let's continue. Like I said, I promise this will be short and sweet and to the point. So make sure that we're going to wrap up in just a little bit here. So make sure to go ahead and get any of your specific trades or stocks in for my analysis this week. Okay. All right. Google. I've been really liking scalping this. For anyone leverage, you understand that I've been signaling Google. I've been talking about Google, and for the short term, trading this kind of downside move, but for the long term, right, getting very interested in Google back to the upside. Okay. Getting very interested in Google back to the upside. Ideally, I'd want Google to maybe retest closer to 140, but we can't predict where the market's trying to go. Okay. So I really want to get interested in Google, closer into this 140 range if that greed kind of steps in and we pull back a little bit deeper if this is a true break of structure bear flag, if you can see there. So I want it kind of down into here ideally, and then start looking at longer dated call options, things of that nature. It's not really moving with the market. As the market's going up, Google's coming down, but still getting interested as one of the slept on stocks, in my opinion, one of the sleepers that Google really has a lot of upside risk to reward. Okay. A lot of upside. You're more than welcome to look at shares as well. Okay. On Google, if you're a person that maybe is limited on money. Okay. Or you just don't want to spend a lot of money. Google. Where is it? Where is it? Okay. GGLL. Okay. GGLL is the leverage version of Google. That just means it moves 1.5 times the movement of Google. All you need to know is from the chart perspective. Okay. So do you see that as inexpensive, right? Comparative to $152 per share on Google, right? But what you can do is if you're bullish on Google, the chart looks roughly the same as you can see. Okay. Downtrend at the height of where Google was, close to 200 and something plus dollars. GGLL was at 53.37. Okay. Or just say $50. Okay. So that means that if I can pick up shares of GGLL at close to 20 to 25 bucks, if Google falls into a little bit deeper of a hole, I can get in dollar cost average and maybe get, 50 to 100 shares of this. Okay. Now that is very manageable for a lot of people to get a full share of a leverage version. And then when Google recovers over the next 5 years, 3 years, 2 years, over the next Trump's term for his full 4 years, Google will be back up to, and GGGL will be back up to 40, back up to 50, and then potentially take out all-time highs, $60, $70, $80 per share. Okay. So if you want to learn more about these things, right, we're in Tesla, obviously TSLL. Okay. Got to be careful about these, but I chart them the same as I do with Tesla and things of that nature. So if you're bullish on Tesla on the drop down and you can't get a full share of Tesla, if you just want to get shares and you really don't want to trade anything in this volatility, going to pick up TSLL at $7, $8, right? And it's almost doubled at this point, heading back up to 14, 15. Maybe you're bullish on Tesla at all-time highs at $488. TSLL was at $41. Okay. So it is okay to look at the leverage version for shares if you have, money that you want to maybe grab some shares of and just have a low risk. Again, for my bigger accounts or anyone that puts, multiple, maybe 10 plus thousand of dollars, right? Make sure you're charting properly and make sure you're entering these, making sure you're keeping your stop losses on point. But the leverage versions of respective stocks are a good way, right? We have a lot of our community members that are in, and folks that have heard me say it on here on the channel for free, SOXL. If you're bullish on semiconductors, right? You don't want to choose NVIDIA, AMD, AVGO, Broadcom, Qualcomm, MU, ARM. If you're bullish on chips in cars, in our computers, and things of that nature, our phones, over the long term, 3, 4, 5 plus years, and we think that that's going to be bullish, then you can pick up some shares of SOXL. Okay. You see at the low point when everyone was getting panicked for NVIDIA and, AMD coming down and things of that nature, right? And maybe you had a hefty amount of shares of AMD, NVIDIA, whatever, and you can still have those, but you can maybe have a little bit lower risk of 100 shares, which would be, $800, right, of SOXL. So when that doubles, now you've got 100 shares of it, and it doubled, which is almost doubled now from the low point of $7 roughly. It's almost doubled at this point. So good way. Again, chart it the same. As you can see, the gaps are still there. If we do have another pullback in the market from our greed sector, it'll be another opportunity to grab it up lower. Maybe it trends up to 16 and then pulls right back to $8, $9, $10. Okay. So just want to, make sure that everyone is served here. There's people with large accounts, large amount of money. There's people with high risk, low risk, and everyone can make money at their own pace, right, of what they want to do. Okay. So there's various different ways you can participate in the market. I know a lot of people get discouraged because I can't grab up 100 shares of NVIDIA, Brian, at $120 per share. That'd be $12,000, right? I don't want to put $12,000 into NVIDIA right now, right? I want to disperse that. I want to keep that cash, whatever, but you want to participate, right? There's NVDL, okay? 2 times long version bullish of NVIDIA, okay? NVDL, again, the chart looks roughly the same, so you never want to chase this move up. You just dollar cost average, wait for that pullback to fill those gaps, and maybe you want to pick up NVDL closer to $25, $20, right? If NVIDIA pulls back even deeper, right? There you go, back into those gaps at $20 when NVIDIA was roughly at $500 before the split. So $20 on NVDL would be roughly around $50 to $60 on NVIDIA. Okay. There's $23 when NVIDIA had gapped down into that low 80s, $85. Could have picked NVDL up at $23, $24, taking it to where it is now, 40. There's double of your money. Okay. So folks that don't have the charts up, yes. If Bing, you're listening here, I know you do leveraged as well. My boy James inside of our community, one of my moderators, does in leverage does leverage versions very well for shares, but you have to know how to chart, because if you buy at $40 and it pulls back to 30, well, you just bought at the highs. Okay. So dollar cost average, chart it the same, pull back. There we go. So there's an easier way, not an easier way, but there's a less expensive way for people to get full shares of something, of their favorite companies, if their office is talking about it or they're trying to get involved in the market or started in the market. Okay. AMDL, same thing for AMD. Okay. You can see there, same chart as AMD. There we go. Push up. Maybe it dollar cost average up here is back into resistance, maybe $5 is the target, but your buy zone for heavy buys will be back closer to 250 in that zone. Okay. If that happens in maybe the fall, right? Maybe we get another pullback at the end of the year, keep these leveraged, quote unquote, less expensive leverage versions of your favorite stocks on watch. Okay. Or just turn on recurring buy, $5 a day, $10 a day, $10 a week, right? And just maybe that's the way you can get involved with this volatility from a lower cost standpoint. Okay. So put a 5 in the chat if that helps you out. Let me know. Give me some feedback if that gives some good things. Obviously, for those that want to own the actual companies, you want to own a full NVIDIA, you want to own those things, buy those things. But I think a lot of folks get like, man, I can't get enough of what I want because it's just getting more and more and more and more expensive. Right. So just want to throw that out there. All righty. Let's go into Apple. And I want to go always into some stocks that are looking very good for really, that are very significantly oversold, kind of like some sleepers. Okay. So Apple, getting really interested here. I don't know. It may be trapped because the only reason I don't like Apple here is because of they're very heavily affected by tariffs. It needs to kind of show me something above 202. I would say I'd be a little bit more confident in the upside on Apple if CPI comes in well and we get above 202. I get a retest, and then Apple can start trending up into this gap to the upside. Okay. So I'm really interested in Apple and Google coinciding because, they've gapped down from that false news narrative of the Google search type of thing. Apple wanted to put AI into Google search, right? This still is technically a higher low, right? Back in the 180, there's a higher low on a 4-hour time frame at 190, and here's a higher low at 195. So I'm keeping it watch on this 195 area on Apple if it can hold that, but I want to break because that will confirm that this is a true support at 195. Because if it can't really break and it still struggles underneath this 200, then we could come back and retest like that. And we would have gotten in a little too early for that push to the upside. Okay. So I'm just watching Apple here personally because a lot of upside potential, right, from this area here. So we already know those gaps to the upside, but I need to see it reclaim back above 202 for Apple to really get bullish and that push and strength to the upside. Again, for my structural people, here's a break of structure right here. Downtrend, 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 break of structure, consolidation. And typically what happens after that is you typically start having some type of breakout like that. I don't know if it's going to be news, if a trade deal comes through this week, if CPI shocks all of us and Apple, something's going to happen. Okay, one way or the other. This is also kind of getting interesting because I don't know if this is an inverse head and shoulders kind of situation, failure to go lower and just false narrative, downside gap, and then we recover the whole move. So keep Apple on your watch. I need to see a little bit more confirmation because the market is at all-time highs, or not all-time highs, but that resistance we were talking about on SPY and QQQ. So I really want to watch Apple because if Apple can get moving, then that could break out and keep the market SPY, QQQ strong. So watching 195, watching kind of this 197, this shoulder line here, and seeing what Apple does around this zone. Okay. Very similar to here. Kind of see downtrend, wants to go a little bit lower, still wants to go lower, and then we reclaim, and then we can go higher. So probably want a little bit more confirmation lower, maybe, but we'll see. Something like that. Amazon super strong here. I'll just correlate this with the market. All right, got some gaps to fill the upside. Looking at Amazon, holding above this 190 level. Holding above this 190 level. Pretty solid level there, but not really. It's just kind of a nasty grind, like I said. All right, just kind of looks very similar to SPY and QQQ. Just gap up, trend. Maybe it gets moving here above the previous highs, so maybe just watching breaks, but it's kind of ugly in this range. I'd rather trade at the top of the range, or if I see a very big volume candle retest and then we can get some movement. I need to see the Amazon, which I miss trading, some movement kind of like that. Just bigger volume candles coming in other than this grind. Now, if the market gets weak, I am watching this trend line kind of like that. Like I'm watching just that trend as it's trending up. Does that trend break and go up, or does that trend break down with volume? We retest 190, start to fail, then we can start getting that movement down. I'll correlate it with SPY and QQQ. All right. Microsoft. Like I said before, I really want it closer into the 450 range, and that'll just be, again, what SPY and QQQ do. But again, for Microsoft, why I'm kind of leaning more towards the downside this week or next week or towards the end of the month, and that just means a pullback. That doesn't mean drastic sells or anything like that. That just means a hefty pullback that we haven't really gotten. Is if Microsoft pulls back, we know Microsoft is a heavy player in the overall market. So if it does get to that 450 and we start breaking trend with volume, right, that could be another signal for me to say, hey, Microsoft is pulling back, underneath that 430 level, which is our pivot, underneath 430. and I'll be watching that on Microsoft. What does it do at 430? Other than that, it's either 430, holding 430, trending up, trying to get to that 440, 450 level. Okay, and I'll just be watching what SPY does in QQQ. If it breaks trend, comes down, maybe CPI takes us down underneath 430, then we could retest into the middle of the gap. I'll be looking for close to 420 as a support for the first level of support here at 420. Okay. Yes, it can stop in the middle of the gap. So 420, if it fails 425, then we can come lower underneath 420 down into, pretty much a half of the gap fill. Okay. Now we'll be closer to 410 will be the next area. Okay. So very interested in Microsoft. I love to top tick. I love to have very little drawdown, but I've got to be patient to either let that break underneath 430 or just let it trend up to 450, and I can keep a tight stop loss above 450 as a big psych level. All right. So a lot more upside here, as you can see on the market, that we can trend back up to that top end zone of Microsoft as well. So all righty. Check chat. Good night, everyone. Dr. B, do you think GC long above 32.93? Let me pull that chart up. Yeah, above 32.93 for sure. You kind of can see this big bullish structure here. I like even 32.85 for a decent support zone, but definitely break of 32.93, like you said, and that would be that previous high if I move that line right there. So 32.93, you absolutely got it right, Lloyd. So 32.93 break, that's probably where that next squeeze would come from above that previous rejection point. So 32.93. And just keep your stop loss, maybe you can do lighter size so you can hold for the full move. But yeah, 32.93 would be that next like big break that you would need. All right. But yeah, on a higher time frame structure, as you can see there, forming a nice break, retest, and then targeting kind of that 3,300 level. But if you want that like big squeeze really quick, maybe for that nice scalp move, I would definitely wait for that 32.93. Yep. Gold's been moving very, very nice. So, yep. Cool. Appreciate you, Lloyd. Hood TA. Let's go on a daily. $55 to $56 heavy resistance here. If you see on the daily right there, heavy resistance. If you're a call person, I think I've gotten to know you a little bit, Tanvir. I would trade back into 50 to 51 for calls, ideally. Pull back into 50 to 51 if you want to, get another entry for calls. See if that holds. That'll be your best risk to reward, is waiting for that pullback like that. Okay. I would not chase this grind back up after we've already gapped up and we got that pretty, deep kind of engulfing candle here. If you can see there, that candle pretty much engulfed the full last candle. That is a sell signal typically for a nice retracement pullback. So if you want to trade the downside, right, you can keep a stop loss, maybe do go a little bit further for options. Keep a stop loss, maybe into 57. All right, it's trying to get to that 60 range, but I think it's not going to do anything until CPI comes out. So it's trying to get back into that psych level. I love trading off psych levels, that 60. Okay. You can see that's where we gap down right there with that big volume spike down the downside. And right there. So 50, I'd say 50, just say 57, 57 and then 60. All in this range. Just got to watch the reaction. I would not trade calls up in that range necessarily because risk to reward is getting a little bit to the downside for a pullback first. Okay. I trade a pullback, let it fall back into that $50 level, and then see what it does back towards 50. All the charts pretty much look the same. All of them look the same. This could be a nice little trend line, inverse head and shoulders type of situation. So if it does pull back 10 veer to 50, is that where the takeoff point is if the market gets strong and then it trends back up? So I trade closer off of 50. And 10 veer, pull Palantir and Robinhood next to each other. They look pretty similar. Right. Does that not look where kind of Robinhood is right around here? Right, where it pulled back into that big breakout level right there and then took off back to highs. So that could be 50 for Hood, depending on what the market does. So calls, hold 50, and then trend back upwards to 60 and then back up to there. So just watch that $50 level. Breaks underneath 50, then we look like something like that. That's why it's so pivotal this week, what happens with CPI. All right. Cool. Perfect. Thank you. It gapped up heavily. Yep. Exactly. Anytime big gap up, waiting for that pullback. All right. Let's see here. Walmart's going to be very interesting with their earnings. I think Walmart needs to cool off. So if I were a strategic betting man, I think Walmart's going to have a pretty decent earnings beat, right? Maybe we push up into there. Maybe it gets a little bit heavy. And I think Walmart will probably start to pull back if it fails back underneath 100. But I'd really like Walmart to get back up into that and then see where it gets heavy. The reason why I'm saying that is because the RSI, again, just getting a little bit high up here on a weekly, daily again. As you can see right there, Walmart wants to fill those gaps back to the downside, maybe pulling back closer to 90. So it's either going to be, back down to 90, 88 or so, and then we push back to the upside. So it looks something like this for earnings, or it fills the gap back up, and then we cool back off again into the fall timeframe. So very interesting to see Walmart because of, the tariffs. Are they going to have low guidance because of international, exchanges, things of that nature? A lot of their products, obviously online. Yeah, any retailer is going to be a little bit affected by the tariffs and maybe their forward guidance, things like that. But never want to bet against Walmart, as the consumer might be headed to Walmart for a little bit less expensive prices for their groceries, whatever it is that they're purchasing. So we'll see. We will see. I think it's always going to be based on guidance for some of these. Let's see. Anything else? That's really what I got for trading wise. I'm checking the community for anything that I may have missed on shares and Lyft. Man, Kava. Okay. Let's see. Kava's chart looks very similar to the market. I'd love for Kava to pull back one more time, fill that gap back down below. So earnings either sending Kava right back down to here, back into 80, Let's see the expected move on Kava. See if they got that up. I'm done, everybody. I'm done. I'm just kind of wrapping up with some final touches here. So if you have any final questions, thoughts, perspectives, let me know. Implied earnings moves. Let me see if he has it up here. I think he has Kava up here. What is ZI Zoom info? What is that? It's a 15% expected move. Interesting. Went from 9 to 12, 7 to 9. Interesting. I don't see an expected move on Kava on this. I don't want to calculate it either. My community members, here's my kind of free play for this week. All right. I'm already in some Disney puts, light size. I'm in 105 puts. It'll all depend on CPI this week, but I'm willing to take a little bit of a risk on it on starters on light size. Okay. If you don't know what that means, right, I'm just making a financial disclaimer here, right? That here's my rationale. Okay. Overextended, gapped up, coming into major data where we need to cool off slightly. We don't have to, right? But this is where I typically make, a nice amount of money on a little amount of risk. Okay. I would really like it closer up into this 108 or 110 level. So if we get up into there, even better. And what that means is I'm in some 105 puts for this week. Okay. I may look at entering into some 105s, I may look at some longer dated ones, back maybe 100 puts into June 20th. Okay. If it does get up a little bit higher. Okay. So Disney, keep an eye on it, right? Maybe for a short-term little scalp back down, right? So that's one that I'm looking at for anyone that understands what I'm talking about. You want to take a look at it, right? For Disney, back up into 110 would be my bigger entry or a more confirmed entry. Right now, I'm just in starters, and the reason being gap down, okay, or push down. Earnings take us back up. Here is previous support at around 106, and we've got gaps below. But got to keep in mind that weekly candle is very, very strong off those lows. Okay. So that means that this week, if we're strong again, we can have another weekly candle that pushes us up into that 110 area. Okay. But at that point, in my opinion, getting real heavy right here, 110, 108, 109, came back down to 90, get real heavy right there. There's a previous support, and then a lot of volume, a lot of sellers still sitting here as Disney is sitting, kind of in this channel. Okay. Long term, if you're bullish on Disney, right, we need to break back above 117. If you can see here, we're just in this channel on Disney. Okay. I'm not saying that Disney long term can't do something like this, right? As we get more digital, ESPN, things of that nature, whatnot, right? That's very strong. I'm just looking for a little scalp. So very little risk, right? I'll keep my stop losses tight, but I am in starter size. So that means I'm only personally in one contract. My average cost is $130. So if it does push up a little bit further, I may, stop out or take it out and I'll lose 30, $40. Okay. But if it goes in my direction and CPI takes us down like that, right, I've just risked $30 to $40, and those contracts for this week, more specifically, right, will go from 130 to roughly $700, $800, $900. right? So that's how I assess getting a little bit early than some people do, right? I know some of you are still learning. A lot of people have questions around, Brian, when do you exit? When do you enter? How did you know that was going to happen? I base it off of my risk. Is the risk worth the reward? If it pushes up higher above 107 and I'm down 30, 40, 50%, but I'm in starter size, that means that $100 for a contract and I'm down 50%, am I willing to risk $50, right? And I'm wrong, or I got in a little bit too soon, right? I take the $50 cut, right? I'm down 50% or whatever on my starters, okay? That means light size. That means that you're comfortable being down 20, 30% for the move to play out, and you're willing to take that risk, and you're like, cool, I can go about my business, not a big deal, right? I'll enter more confidently closer to 110, right? But if it goes, I would have been willing to risk $30, $40, $50. That means 50% of my contract size. So I'm in at an average cost of 130, right? If I'm down 50%, what is that? $60 or so. I'm willing to risk $60 for the potential to make, if it goes underneath 105, just say $400 or $500. You get my drift? So that's how I personally will take some of these like trades here or there where I see it that needs to cool off, but I'm not going to go heavy size. That's how I, those of you that took the Lilly trade right before earnings, same concept, gapped up from that Weight Watchers news, right? Need to cool off. It was into earnings, spent $85, $90 for the potential to make $900. Get my drift? So take that with what you please. If you're not inside of our community and you take it on your own, just know, do your own due diligence on that. If you can get a contract further out, I think it'd be a little bit safer, right? But that is one that I'm looking at for a gap back down. If it can push up into that 110 a little bit better. Okay. But 106, 107 into that area, getting real heavy potentially for a potential cool off back down. We good? So just want to throw that little free trade out there. If you are savvy and you analyze it and you do your own due diligence. Okay. Let's see. That's about it. There's rumors of Tesla looking to potentially acquire Lyft. Palantir, Hood are both meme stock, especially favorite among retail investors. Yeah. I think Palantir is it is good long term. I think it's overvalued right now. I think it needs to cool off personally. I think a lot of retail investors got hip to Palantir after a couple of earnings. They just kept moving. It's kind of like what Nvidia did, right? Just kept going. Retail investors get involved late, right, and get slammed back down on the real buy up when I think $30 to $50 to $60, right, is really the pullback that Palantir needs, about half of the evaluation that it has now. I think they have a really good CEO. I think he's awesome. I think it makes sense working with the government, AI space, like it all makes sense. But definitely Palantir, in my opinion, a little bit overvalued, and it can keep going higher, but I would not chase it personally. I just dollar cost average, get involved, and then wait for that deep pullback or some kind of flash crash news, whatever it is. They'll put something out there. Tesla looking to acquire Lyft. Lyft's chart looks great. I'm kind of mad I missed that. Got to wait for the retest. But Lyft, if you don't know, got profitable, right? So for those of you that did not see my Instagram post about Lyft that we posted inside of our community a while back, I know there's other traders, other investors that have been talking about Lyft and whatnot. But here it is I was talking about it for the past couple of years, but more so interested in it over the last couple of months, simply because I'm moving Lyft from my trade ideas. This was end of March, a big buy opportunity for the next couple of years. Setup and financials look very similar to when we called Palantir. When they become profitable, right? Share buying now and also leaps into 2027. Okay. Here is where kind of like the same setup as Kava, and also Dutch Bros. When Dutch Bros was sitting at 30, $35, kind of the same setup here, consolidating at support at $12, $10, $13, right? Big fall consolidation, and then just building from there. Okay. Ironically, took my eyes off of it, and there's how the chart looks now. Okay. So if we can get a gap fill, obviously it's looking to head back to $20. If it just goes, hey, maybe get involved a little bit, right? The big breakout level, if that is true and Tesla does happen to acquire it, I do believe, Lyft can get, that $30 move, $50, things like that. If it breaks above $20, okay? That level is going to be very key for Lyft to get above on a weekly time frame or a daily time frame to get above $20. So I love how this is looking personally, right? But we had it last time. Break, pulls back. Break, does it pull back again? Right? So maybe just trade or get involved in this channel for right now. If you want to just share buy it, equity trade it from $12, $13, $14 up to $20. Right. But I know a lot of people have some concerns or questions about Lyft long term. But if they do get acquired, do have some acquisition, do have some other injection of money, yes, it can, double up from that $20 break for sure. But if you can see on the charts, it's already ran. Try to see if we can get that higher low pullback to retest 1350. So maybe put a buy order in or something of that nature. Right, 1350. If that gap can fill back to the downside from that breakout, that'd be great. Right, and get involved closer to $13, $14 to get a better average cost. But if you don't want to wait, and Brian, what if it just keeps going to 20 from here? DCA on the way up. If you're trading it, I would not enter calls right here personally due to this overextension from your earnings. It could definitely have a continuation move. This is definitely a breakout. Keep your maybe 15 would look like a support right now, right? $15. It broke above, maybe it retest 15 and continues. So just keep 15 on watch. Okay. But yeah, Lyft, great looking chart in my opinion for a 2, 3, 4 year breakout, kind of like what Uber's doing, right? Does it follow in Uber's footsteps in some type of way? And Lyft is down here. Right. And Uber takes off to $90. So keep Lyft on your watch. Right. It is technically, in my opinion, still a penny stock. I consider my penny stocks underneath $20 or so. But guess where Kava is now? Right. When we were looking at Kava back down here at $25, $30 for that breakout. All right. So cool. I just answered the question in the chat. I think we're done. 40% dividend. Wow. Oh, is it an Israeli company? I mean, from a chart perspective, I mean, I look at these as, I need to do more due diligence, but could it double up from 10 to $20? I could definitely see that from a chart perspective. If it, happens to break out, there's that $19, breaks out, goes like that. Yeah, I could definitely see it. Got some gaps to the upside on a monthly. Yeah, it could be a sleeper. I don't know too much about it, but with a dividend like that, yeah, I could see it up to 20, $25, filling that gap back up. I think people talk about it too late, but yeah, it looks from a chart perspective, kind of a downtrend here. Just needs to break that trend, maybe on a monthly or so. Maybe this earnings does it and everyone talks about it or something, but I would definitely look at that if you're interested. It's more of a penny stock or maybe some long calls that are cheap out. Who knows? Some kind of crazy pop could happen. I mean, maybe you could do a January 15th, 2027. Try to get filled on a 12 call. Who knows? I mean, I don't really look too much in these necessarily, but can you make money off of them? Yeah. Maybe January 16th, 2026. Those are a little bit tighter spreads, 12.5. You could look at that potentially. Risk to reward, maybe worth it for you. It's up to you. But yeah, something crazy happens. All right. Well, that's all I got, folks. That's all I got. I'll update everybody. Make sure you keep on watch for this week. Some updated videos. I'll update on CPI and PPI. Just know my sentiment for this week is we're up into resistance. CPI will send us one direction or the other on Tuesday morning. Fed Powell is speaking on Thursday, right? Kind of mid-morning. Okay, so be on watch for that. That could offer some volatility. But I am looking for that pullback ideally. A little bit higher, but ideally looking for that pullback to get involved on calls or share buying again. We're in greed. We need to be careful. When you get greedy, people take profits. When we're fearful, people buy. So look at that fear and greed index. Analyze yourself if you're in shares long-term, all those good things. Appreciate y'all. Happy Mother's Day to you. Be safe this weekend for the remainder of the week. I'll talk to y'all in the community